Hi everyone, it's Catharine MacIntosh with Listed, and I'm here today with Mallory Wilkinson of Royal LePage Signature Realty. We're at the 495 Wellington office, which I love. Welcome, Mallory.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm honored to be invited to be on here. I love Listed, so.
That's great. Actually, I couldn't wait to have you on, and I know we were trying to find a date. And one of the reasons that I so much wanted to have you on here to talk about real estate and how you run your business is I know that the moment you discovered Listed, you were on it, right? And so to me, that signified that maybe there's some pain points, that realtors are
A
experiencing in their
few.
business. So what made you jump on the bandwagon so excitedly?
I think it just filled a few voids that I was really struggling with in my business. So I sell across sort of Toronto West into Mississauga, Burlington, Oakville, all the way to Hamilton sometimes. And with the different boards, it really created a barrier for me. So I would have to be half on ITSO, which is one board, or that's an amalgamation of boards, and then some on Treb. And so even some Toronto agents who list in Hamilton won't list it on the local board. So there's the option of, or the opportunity to potentially miss listings without having two searches set up, which is then overbearing for clients to have to learn two different platforms and listings coming through looking entirely different and having to, when you look at a listing, what information is where, and it's drastically different between the two boards. So it was nice because it put everything in one spot, and I could create one solid list. Everything looked the same. It was super easy for them to use, which user function I think is also the other thing I was really struggling with. So the platform we're sort of provided by our board isn't the most user friendly anymore. And I got a lot of complaints from clients, so they would go to alternative apps, and with Listed, it sort of has that alternative app vibe where it's now user friendly, everything's all in one spot, but it connects them to me, so that connection is reestablished and makes it much easier to communicate and do my job ultimately. So yay, thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. There's so many great things that you said there that I want to touch on. So, number one, Listed was created so there would be a connection between you and your clients. Because if the tools that you're offered by your MLS are actually making your clients go search out other apps that you're not on with them, then you've got a competitor sort of stuck in between you and your clients.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We actually, it's last summer. So last summer I had a client who she preferred a competitor's app, and we showed up, and they had a sign on the front lawn, and then she hadn't even realized that that was how that worked. They
Right.
just thought it was realtor.ca, and sort of open platform. And she was surprised to find out when I was oh yeah, it's actually another brokerage that hosts that. And she was so it's we as realtors are aware of certain things, but that could cause a client to go elsewhere because they're not really realizing what sort of how things are being served to them. So
Right. Now, why is that? That's because they thought it was the listing brokerage,
yeah.
right?
So
But instead, they're just a cooperating brokerage that was advertising the app and has a attractive platform. Yeah.
yeah, I think with the amount of apps that are out there, what people are looking for is also just something that's the most user friendly and also gives them information that they can't get elsewhere.
Right.
In particular, sold information, even Treb, the app that we are provided was sort of behind the hop on providing sold information. So that was the real first wave, I'd say, of people going elsewhere. And I can't blame them. If you're allowed to have that information now, why are we not providing it as their realtors? So that was, yeah, I think ultimately I don't blame them for going elsewhere, but I'm glad that you came along. Again, it just sort of really checks a lot of those boxes that as a consumer, people are that's what they want, is they don't want to feel like we're sort of hiding information. sorry. They don't want us, the clients don't want to feel like we're hiding information from them. And
Yeah.
I think the transparency that's now out there is helpful. I think there's a million things that clients and customers don't know about the market, but a sold price shouldn't be something that should be hidden. So I think that change was really great, and Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
tangenting.
yeah. No, I think what's interesting is that there are even some realtors that don't quite understand the difference because some of these competitor apps are coming across like a benign app, but there's no just like real estate platform without being attached to a brokerage.
Right.
So when you look at the business model of why something exists, we found a gap in the market for realtors to connect with an app that's able to compete with these other apps and connect the realtor themselves. So we're not a brokerage, we're not an MLS, we're not an ad portal. You know, we think of realtor.ca as actually an ad portal
Right.
for agents to show their listings. So it's a listing agent ad portal. And so if your clients are on that, they're also not connected to you.
For sure. Like it's kind of interesting. I had a listing a couple of weeks ago, and the number of people reaching out through realtor.ca, and like there is an option now on there where it says like I am working with a realtor, which I find a little bit interesting because like why are you still reaching out to me then if you have a realtor? So like I'd rather, where something like listed, like if a client is interested in a listing and then they reach out directly to me through that app, like you're immediately connected to me versus knowing if they are using something like realtor.ca,
Yeah.
they have, why do they feel the need to go to that realtor, like who's listing that property? And it's because that's the button that's connected. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah, it is an interesting dilemma of organized real estate that it hasn't solved in a way, because one thing that was never clear and is clearer actually with TRESA, the new laws that have come out, is who represents who and who's working with who. So who should your clients get when they're interested in a property?
I mean, to be properly represented, I would rather them come to me. They'll have the best sort of like support and coverage and information provided to them, and at that point there is no even like potential for a bias to come in.
Yeah.
And at that point too, like I mean, you're now allowed to be a self-represented party, which is an interesting situation, but again, that does create liabilities for buyers that they may not even know exist because
Yeah.
they think they know what they know now because they have the access to the sales, but they don't know the actual inner workings. So it's a bit of
Right.
and like a lawyer too, like technically a lawyer can draw that up, but and they see contracts all the time, but they're not seeing properties. So there is just knowledge that a realtor will always have over the general public or even like a lawyer that, is sort of invaluable that doesn't necessarily get advertised that way.
Exactly. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to go back to your original point about when you have clients working in different geographies and you use the tools that come with your MLS. Listed worked very hard to integrate with and support MLSs because in a way they are deep and vast for agents to go. You could get home, you go on your desktop, you do all your research for a client. But listed is a front end interface, so you and your clients are always connected together to all the information seamlessly, so they are reaching you. They're never mistakenly reaching the listing agent or another cooperating brokerage. So one of the challenges you mentioned at the beginning was if you're using your front end, like your MLS and the front end app they provide, with one MLS system, you're giving them one app, and then they got to download another app and go into another system to get information from your other MLS.
Yeah, like that just drives me. I mean, personally, I have to do that on my end, on the back end.
Yeah.
And like, it is just like, I find myself like, there's a little bit of an adjustment every time I switch from one to the other when you're going like from like it's O2 Treb, like
Yeah.
just the way the information is presented, you sort of like hiccup a little bit because you're like, oh yeah, where on the page is that?
Yeah.
And so like, and this is like, these are numbers and things that I'm constantly looking at. Whereas like a consumer, you're not used to sort of like looking at these platforms. So it just becomes a little bit convoluted. And so they're going to be drawn back to something where they can see it all in one spot,
Yeah.
which is going to be not necessarily connected to me if you don't have something like listed. So
Exactly, because I think that one of the challenges for organized real estate is we let our dirty laundry, like the back part of what we do come to the forefront. Like, why can't consumers have a consistent, unified real estate platform for all the listings through their own agent?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we wanted to solve. So, and I think the second thing is that even other agents don't understand why, when they're connected to their own board, why does a competitor app have properties on it that their own app doesn't?
Yeah.
Like, that you could go to a condo building and your clients could say, why aren't we seeing that one? And you're like, what one? And without listed or without being part of one of these other brokerages that came into being to kind of join all the boards and then provide all the listings and use their business model as a brokerage to attract agents to serve consumer leads to their agents at a beneficial split to the brokerage, how is that good for anyone, was our question. So I'm glad you have a tool that you love and where your clients have a consistent experience, so they don't have to go look for something else or Google it.
Yeah, or just potentially miss altogether. Like if they are only using the platform that their realtor provides them, and it is their like specific board, whether it be on Itso or Toronto, that they run that risk of missing a property altogether because either an out of town agent didn't post on the local board,
Yep.
or it's only on the local board and they don't have access to that. So it's kind of wild that is even a scenario where something is on the market and you just wouldn't know because of jurisdictions and different technologies.
Exactly. Okay. We'll leave this topic soon. I find it really interesting because there's so much consumers don't know, right? And the whole point is, if you're going to buy something, you don't want to miss something that's out there, right? So if you don't have all the inventory, regardless of price and everything else, if it's not even on the table to consider, you're already missing out. So 2 things I want to ask you. One is in relationship to the way of the future. So one of the tenets of the MLS is compensation and cooperation. And of course, in the last year, compensation has come into question. So we're going to leave that part aside.
Okay.
But cooperation is definitely a tenet of the MLS, and that's why it's so successful. Because all the brokerages that are members of an MLS come together so that you clearly don't have 5,000 listings.
Would
but
be nice.
You want to get your clients access to all the listings so they can make a choice.
Absolutely.
So wouldn't it be amazing if you could choose the MLS you want to be part of in North America and then have access to a data lake at a professional level where you are a professional, part of a professional association with access to a multiple listing service that has all the listings in North America. So your clients are always reaching you and you're not hitting siloed boundaries. Because all these MLSs aren't cooperating. What they practice, so the technology of the MLS that brokerages are meant to practice, isn't being applied at the level of the MLS between MLSs. So third-party technology providers actually solve that, whether it's listed or something else. I'm happy to have competition. I think that's how you get innovation. But your industry and the boards you're a member of, wouldn't that be great if they cooperated so you could have everything you need to do your job anywhere globally?
It would be a dream. If you think like the world in general, like that's what technology has done. It's connected us. Real estate, we were all separate boards because we didn't have the means to communicate, and like not everyone traveled outside of their areas. But I think, technology has created this connection throughout the entire world. So why are we not working with that?
What an amazing point. Actually, you nailed it. There's a good reason why we didn't do it previously. It wasn't possible. We've collapsed our geography with technology to where someone could now live in the mountains and, do their tech job, that serves clients in like San Francisco, because all of a sudden you can work from anywhere, pretty much.
Yes.
right? So how amazing, like if you have a seller, you want clients from anywhere in the world to be able to find your listing.
Exactly. It's it's very, I mean, back in the day when you'd have the new listings would come out and it would be this giant book. It's very different. We're like, we have a giant book that's infinite now. So
Yeah.
like it's very strange to not make that accessible to all. Like if especially like even just within our own province, if we're licensed to work in Ontario, why do we not have access to all of Ontario?
Yeah, and I just think it needs to stop. It needs to flow with technology and go beyond geographical borders. When you look back in history with how real estate started, it was on Main Street with, a certain brokerage with a person's last name, and a buyer or seller had to go to Brown Real Estate over here and, Smith Real Estate over here and go to different brokerages. And that's how this cooperation started as, you know what, we're going to compensate and cooperate with each other for the benefit of our clients so they can come to a single unified place. And I think it's just time we update that. Okay, so last thing on that, inventory. We had another change at the national level. You guys have faced so much change, but a change at the national level in Canada for sure through CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association, and the Realtor Cooperation Policy, which put out a new directive regarding exclusive and coming soon listings. What is your feeling on exclusive and coming soon listings to start?
I think there's definitely a benefit to it. Not everyone wants, especially like even like through COVID, they didn't want tons of people traipsing through their property, and certain people are sensitive to certain things. So I mean, I think having the ability to do an exclusive listing and still have it shared in certain ways is incredibly important. I would say famous people probably have the highest
high
level
net
of
worth.
like security issues with that. So
Yep.
you know I think the new rules have restricted things in a way to sort of combat things that were being abused in a sense, where they'd have a coming soon sign on a lawn for 3 months and it would never actually come, or it would sell before even hitting MLS, and that's what they're trying to combat. But I do think there should be an opportunity if someone doesn't want to be on the open market public for a way for that to still be shared and still be allowed.
Yes. And I actually think the law was great in this respect because what you alluded to is the bad apples who were not explaining to their clients their exposure was going to be limited. They might get fewer offers, as a compromise for having more privacy or whatever, and a realtor perhaps using it to double end a deal, right, instead of actually doing the best for their client.
Yeah.
So I love the spirit of the law is that all listings go to the MLS because it's consistency, data accuracy. Because of the MLS, we know that a property is truly available and valid on the market, or its status is changed and it is not.
Yeah.
Which is great. And the law actually helped us to do the thing we're talking about, which is give you all the inventory for your client. So one of the things the law provides for is that within a realtor's brokerage, any exclusive or coming soon listing can be shown. And then if you've got somebody outside your brokerage as an agent who you think might be interested in your seller's listing, you can communicate that to them in a direct one-to-one communication. The question remains, how the heck do you know who to send it to? Right? There might be people who are agents in a given area that work that area that you think, oh, I'm going to send it to them because that's their farm area.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you don't really know if someone in Vancouver is looking at an area in Toronto that has your listing and it's maybe exclusive or coming soon because it's summer and they don't want to go on until the fall market, but they would be really happy to see what could happen with it. So these listings are not part of the MLS, and therefore, when the MLS is representing you, or all agents, they're missing out on this segment of inventory that are off market that we know exists. So unlisted, we've married the best of both worlds, and it's new and it hasn't, I don't even know if you've tried it yet. Have you seen it?
I got one like notification last week actually, and I was going to ask you about
Oh,
that
good.
today because it said like, oh, so and so has sent you this listing that you might be interested in, and it said like exclusive, and I was like, how did they do this?
How did they do this?
Yeah.
Okay. The new law is amazing because it allowed us to bake the rules of it into Listed's exclusive and coming soon network called Broker Lists feature. So if there is an agent that has an exclusive listing, you and your clients, and they're outside of your brokerage, you and your clients cannot see it. However, what do your clients do? They make saved searches. You make saved searches for them.
Mm-hmm.
We have a reverse AI mechanism that takes all the listings you can't see, like invisible ink, takes that interest, which is demand, matches it to supply. So now that listing agent can get a notification, Mallory Wilkinson might have a client interested in this. You might not even have known why you got it. And then when you received it, when you tap it, it shows you what client is probably interested in it.
Yeah, so how did they get it on to listed?
Okay. So the listing agent, no, this is good.
Yeah, because I'm like, if I had an exclusive, like, how do I do what just happened to me?
Yes, exactly. So it's like chicken or egg, which came first?
Yeah.
We really don't know. But what we do know is there are people who have exclusive and coming soon listings that can't be seen, so they're invisible.
Yep.
And we have people who have demand. They want to live in a certain area. They have certain criteria. So the demand is represented by a saved search.
Yep.
And the supply is represented by a listing. Now, anyone in that agent who sent that to brokerage could have seen that exclusive listing because that is allowed. But you couldn't see their exclusive listing until we sent them a note saying, we suggest you send your listing to these 7 realtors, 12 realtors, 1 realtor, and it's true demand. So if they chose not to tap send to you in a direct one-to-one communication, you never would have known about it.
That's so interesting. How did you know about, like, is it because you've connected with the brokerage?
So we know because we know what people are looking for because they've created a saved search and put in their filters and saved it.
But how did you know
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. We know the listings that somebody uploads in the exclusive and coming soon network, so they can add their own listing to list it.
I see. Okay. That's what I was like, how did
part.
that connect?
Yeah. So actually, if you had, maybe you have somebody in the summer who's thinking of coming to market in the fall.
Right.
They'd love if you could find out if there's some other agents, that might be interested or have clients that are interested, but they want to wait till after Labor Day because that's where they're going to get the biggest exposure. But if they got their price, they'd be happy to go early. Mm-hmm. So let's say you wanted to put out a coming soon listing that's going to come to market on September 9th. But today's July 21st. You could add your coming soon listing to listed, put up photos, fill it in, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 3 parking, whatever it is, the area that it's in. You put it up, all of a sudden, because you're with Signature and they're over 1,600 agents, right? All of a sudden, you've got exposure to your own network, but then you've got all the people who are outside your brokerage who won't see your listing, but we know their demand.
Right.
So we'll match it to your listing and let you know, and you can choose to share it with them compliantly in a direct one-to-one communication through listed. So we're no longer a one-to-many network in that regard. We just have a direct one-to-one messaging service in listed.
Smart. It's brilliant.
It actually takes a listing inventory that's traditionally hard to get exposure on,
Right.
and makes it 100 times more available
And
than it
it's
used to be.
direct. Like, it's with two people who are directly looking for that criteria. So it's, you're
Yeah.
not just like throwing it into the wind and hoping for the best. At that point, it's people who are like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. It matches that criteria, and it gives them the opportunity to see something that they wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Exactly. So back to my example with your client who wants to go out September 9th.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot make a mistake on the exclusive or coming soon network unlisted. You would put up your listing. Listed handles all the access of who can and can't see it. So from today, July 21st, up until September 4th, it would be treated like an exclusive, which means it's never publicly marketed. Only your brokerage sees it, or someone you've shared it with in a direct one-to-one communication. And the key here is that we solved you not knowing who to share it with.
It is wildly genius. Like, it's so smart.
Thank you.
I feel like
I'm super
just
excited
like
about
that,
it.
the value of that is like, I think like in general the app is fabulous, and I think that the functionality of it for consumers is amazing, but I think what it's offering to realtors is actually like invaluable. Like, I just feel like it's really solving a lot of issues that, I mean, some people who may not even realize is an issue.
Right.
Like, in terms of like, I mean, exclusives are an interesting topic to begin with, but knowing that you're directly marketing to people one-to-one with, I mean, and like their buyer agent,
Yeah.
it's genius. I am like
Thank
actually
you.
like flabbergasted. When I got it, I was slightly confused, and I was like, I didn't really. I'm like, how did this happen? How did I get this, and why? And I was like, I need to know these answers. So it's like actually so much even more exciting than I had thought.
Did you see a saved search that matched either your own saved search or your client's saved search?
I can't even remember where it was. I just saw exclusive, and I was like, how?
Yeah. If you tapped that alert to open it, you were
Yep.
probably in the midst of doing stuff, and you thought, "Oh, I'm going to ask Catherine because I'm going to see her shortly."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it did say like so and so sent you
This.
yes, and I was like, I'm like, who? What? And then I clicked and it said exclusive, and I was like, ooh, I need to know how.
How this happened. In your Me tab, you actually have sent listings, if you had one you sent, and received. So there is a space where just your own direct DMs, live, which is great. Okay, I'm so glad you left this because even this is why agents who never do exclusive and coming soon listings, now in your buyer and seller guide, it's imperative for agents to be able to say to their buyers, you'll never miss a listing. Because even if we are not in the off-market listings at all, if we ever come across an off-market listing we can't see, the listing agent will know about us as long as we've communicated our desire through a saved search, unlisted.
I think on a mass scale, this is so smart.
Thank you.
Like,
Thank you.
I think it just gives like another avenue for consumers to find their property. Like, it's genius because like I mean, for certain buyers, like depending on obviously inventory levels. I mean, even when inventory levels are high, like right now, condos are crazy.
Yeah.
But again, the quality of the mass of those is not great. And I think that's also created a bit of like worry in like sellers who have a really lovely product and they don't want to go to market to sort of gain that stigma of sitting on the market. But ultimately, if you did an exclusive as a listing with a condo like that, potentially you could then snag one of those buyers that's in the market in that condo world who's sick of seeing sort of an investor's vacant, beaten up unit.
Right.
Or you don't, but you have that extra opportunity to still potentially sell without the stigma attached of sitting on the market in that pool right now. So
exactly. It puts you as agents back in the buyer's seat in a way, and it also allows you to ensure that your clients, seller and buyer clients, are connected to the entire market, which is what organized real estate needs to be part of. Another best benefit of it is that the very people who made the law, it supports the law. It actually, by bringing this opportunity, will help more listings go to MLS and not be off market because it's more challenging in some ways, but because it's now edified into a very strict cooperation and following the rules, it's just going to allow for an organized way of approaching on and off market listings. And we've created an anonymized two-way data exchange with MLSs. So now the MLS, whose problem it was to not know about this off-market inventory, could actually report and remain the source of truth for all MLS data, because they could get in aggregate anonymized data about off-market and report back to you guys, because it is our goal to always be supporting organized real estate. We have a choice as a third-party provider: work with organized real estate or against it. And my hope is that organized real estate, to stay relevant and keep existing, works with the vendors who want to support organized real estate.
Right. So then you're saying like those stats and things tied to all of those exclusives would then also be available for us to then review, which is
And know and be aware of.
like that. I think the value in that is incredible.
And it would be
I'm a
safe
stats
for the
gal.
sellers. Like, it's anonymized.
Exactly, like that.
Yeah.
They keep that, like any of like those sellers who have like those sensitivities and don't want to be on the open public market. I think having that still stay how it is, because I'm assuming like the stat would be like by area.
By area and
Right.
region. Is it up? Is it down? What's the off market? And what's happening right now is that agents not knowing what the rules even mean. I can't believe how many agents have misunderstood the 3-day rule and what public marketing is or isn't. So we bake it into the app that way, but their only option has been chat groups and Facebook groups. And the rule says you cannot even be on a platform under a login, like traditionally what's called a VOW.
Right.
So brokerages are at risk. And if agents use these chat groups and social media groups, who owns the seller's data? And when you publish a $5 million listing to a chat group of realtors, who's seen it, what's happening to it? It's like what you said, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. Like, you don't even know.
Exactly.
Enlisted, the seller owns the data under agency of the brokerage through the agent. It's de-risked. It increases exposure in a way that we've never been able to do before. It's super exciting.
Yeah, like it. I think what I'm most excited is the direct to someone who's already looking for that product.
Right.
Like, you're not wasting time. And sorry, can I just?
Yeah, please get some water. Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I just think you kind of do our job for us at that point.
Do you know what? Efficiency helps everyone. Efficiency,
Yes.
These are the 3 things I think Listed does, and I'd love your thought on this, but makes you and your clients more efficient. Saving time is saving money, saving energy, lowering frustration. It increases your presence, which increases their ability to not miss inventory, to know what's going on with a property. They're always reaching the right person in the right moment to take action. Like if they liked a listing and you and they get a notification it came back on the market, you can take immediate action on
I
it.
also, sorry, like to be able to, like, there's a feature in Listed that you're allowed to leave, like, you can leave notes.
Oh, perfect.
So, like, if I'm seeing my clients build lists, I actually go in and I'll go through, like, rather than emailing them or texting them, like, I'm a bit of a night owl, like, at midnight, I'm going in, I'm just, like, leaving little notes that, like, you know, I pulled some comps so they can see, like, roughly what thing's going to be selling for potentially, or if I see a red flag about something and, you know, do we still want to see it? Do you want to keep it in this list? Should we check it out?
Wow.
So I think, like, those little notes, and then for them to reference back to as well, like, I can always send an email with, like, the links to the listings through, like, my regular board, but ultimately that link will expire. Whereas, like, what I love about Listed is, like, that's never going to expire. That note is always going to be tied to that listing for them, whether it's sold or back on the market. I think there's a lot of, like, little nuanced features that really do save a ton of time and make things a little bit more, just, like, heightens the communication level to something that's way more functional than what we've had in the past.
Precisely. And I like to connect that to how it confers value of the realtor to their clients, right? They see that you've been active. They see that you can't sleep for thinking about what they're going to buy or how their sale is going to go.
Yeah. I think like it's funny to wake up because then in the morning I'll get a text like, oh, I saw your note on this listing. And they're like, do you think we could go see it today? And it's like, perfect. Like it just makes everything flow a little bit easier because not everyone wants a text or an email from me at like midnight.
Yeah.
But like, it's sort of like keeps it on their schedule and, it just, I think the accessibility of it is what I really like because again, like I've sent emails in the past where like it is just that link and it's like, hey, like I saw you looking at these ones. These are my thoughts. And then like 2 weeks from then, that link is no longer accessible. So it's
Right. There's all these frustration points otherwise.
So
This is a huge topic. Another feature, and that's a huge topic, especially with other apps, is valuation and a price
Yes.
estimator. And I know in so many ways, especially in a leading or lagging market, the price estimate has foiled, what the seller's expectations
Yeah.
or the buyer's ability to follow your advice in an offer night because they're worried because they see these online estimates. One of the things we wanted to do is have this guess the price because we found that when a client is involved in guessing the price or looking at or following the price, it is a playful way of adding to their learning and value without being stressful for them. Do you and your clients use that at all, or have you guessed
I've
the
had
price?
a couple put it in, and like it's never been something that we've like directly chatted about, but I actually think it would be really interesting to start to implement, especially the more that we see,
Yeah.
and like when you start to see properties selling, to sort of like assess whether or not that client actually understands the values and based on like the conversations we've been having. And like I do think it's like buyers are really interesting because I typically find by the time they've purchased they're like, oh, I'm a pro now. And I'm like,
Right?
I think
Yeah.
that would be a really interesting practice to start clients using to also just to help understand their expectations and to ensure that they're actually on the same page as me in terms of value and like what they're going to get for their price point. So
Exactly, because it's a translation of list price. So $7.99 is a $9.50
Yeah.
sale, right? Or if it's a condo out now for $8.99, it's really
Yeah.
a $7.20. But we know
Yeah.
that as industry professionals, so it's a translation of price. The other great thing is that when they invite their friend to guess the price, that friend very conveniently will get Mallory as their agent if they don't already have an agent.
Right.
So it's a way to grow and make sure that your clients are, and your future clients are getting a great realtor that is not bought for, is not a lead, but is actually just referred from your sphere of influence.
Yeah. And I understand the draw from a consumer's point to those sites that sort of give the estimated price. But it really makes my job harder when, it really is inaccurate. And like whether it's a buyer or a seller, like I last summer saw a scenario where a client thought their house was worth one thing and like because their neighbor was on and that was estimated at that X price, but it wasn't taking into consideration those comps that were like right next to a train track or
Yeah.
it's, AI, I think in the future will get better. And I think it's something that has to be adopted and, eventually we just have to work with it. But I think there is still always going to be something that a human can analyze just better,
Yeah.
in general. Like, I think there is like human experience that can't necessarily be replaced.
Exactly. Actually, that's one of the elements of our belief in what technology should provide is technology is a tool. It's not a replacement. And I believe in the future, the people and companies that are going to win the day are actually just using technology to leverage the human connection and interaction, because you need that human value.
Yeah, because with the ability to be a self-represented party now, if you're going off of that estimated price that isn't actually looking at comparables the same way a human would,
Yep.
you could be vastly overpaying because it didn't take in those train tracks into consideration or whatever those features may be, or like, a layout, same square footage, same area, same number of parking. But the layout of an interior house could be drastically different, and one is way more valuable than the other.
Exactly.
So the way it is now, that's not taken into consideration, and I think that is misleading to consumers who aren't understanding that.
Yes, and then there are the invisible aspects, like months of inventory. If an estimator doesn't take that into consideration, that essentially means that the price you're going to pay is related to supply and demand,
Yeah.
which I think in many cases is even more important than the attributes of the property itself, because we could take the same exact house and in a different market with different months of
Yeah.
inventory or supply or lack of supply, the price changes drastically.
Which we have seen
Which
the
we have
last couple
witnessed.
of years.
Actually, there was a client who I think the
someone
power
just has to move at the.
can somebody?
It's like a sensor.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There we go. Lights back on. Oh, wow. That was amazing. See, there's AI thought, because we were so not moving around,
Yeah.
that it should turn the lights off for us. Okay. See? See, and then a human had to get up and walk around to trigger them. Thank you. Wow. Okay. The last thing I was going to say on this is that there's an agent who's been in the business 25 years, and he said his client called him and said, "Should we do a price reduction?" That's never in his life happened to him. I said, "Oh, please tell me how that happened."
Yeah. That's so funny.
They had bought, and then they were in a changing market, and they needed to sell in order for that to go through, which many people have found themselves in, because
Yeah.
it's always a debate what you do, and it's hard when the market's changing. But I find always one person in the couple likes to kind of lead the way. So in this case, the wife was looking at all the properties and noticed, as she made lists and guessed the price and listed, that they were competing with a number of houses in their neighborhood, and thought, how's anyone going to be attracted to come to ours? So she
Right.
called and said, "Hey, if we reduce the price by a bit, do you think we'd get more action?" So they did that, and it sold first, like before the other three that were on the market. They weren't thrilled with what they got until 3 months later, when they saw what those other properties finally sold for, which was
Right.
a lot less than she and her husband sold for, by taking quicker action and accepting.
Yeah.
The market had gone down slightly.
Yeah. I think, again, and that's where I think consumers being informed and having access to all this data and these listings, whether it's on your local board or not, like, it could have been such a scenario like Hamilton, where they wouldn't even have known that there were Toronto agents with two other houses in their neighborhood on that market. So, like, if they
Right.
didn't have something like listed where you can see both boards, I think that added value of having all of that access is super important for consumers. And I mean, especially in this scenario, like, they reached out to their agent, which is, proof that having access to this information it's easier for like consumers and clients to make those decisions and come down in price when the motivation is there to do so, versus wasting their time and then ultimately winding up in a worse situation. So
Exactly.
it's
And the fact that the information actually prompts the consumer to reach their agent and ask more intelligent questions. Because you said earlier, consumers don't always know what they don't know.
yeah.
So I feel like getting a sense of that from the data opens up their minds to ask the questions they wouldn't have otherwise known to ask. And then feeling again that the realtor has so much value, because you can translate what's happening.
Yeah. I think I mean, there is like a lot of things about listed that I think is incredibly valuable for that sense. And like, I have clients who still like lurk
Oh yeah.
after they're done, and like, it is really funny to then, like, they'll send me something like, "What do you think?" And like, and now they have access to just continue to watch. And like,
Yeah.
where I think like back in the day, if you didn't have access to things like listed, once that sold was off realtor.ca and you weren't
was
working with your
gone.
realtor, like there was oftentimes like I would shut off people's, not shut off people's accounts, but like I would shut off their searches so they weren't getting those emails, but like having that ability to, just do whatever they want on their own. And like I think it's very helpful for consumers, but I also just think it helps us help them, if that makes sense.
Yes. And especially for repeat and referral agents,
Yeah.
for people to have a bona fide interest in real estate, if you own real estate, you have a bona fide interest in real estate,
Yeah.
right? Like, it doesn't mean you're going to sell tomorrow, but it does mean you want to follow up with that and be able to ask your agent. Otherwise, they're Googling it and they're finding when they see their neighbor's house for sale, they want to know how that's going to impact their own property value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like your little button
Yeah.
for like the location. Because like, like a client who now in their house, they could be sitting on the sofa and as one does, rather than scrolling on social media, they can just go on, click that and see what else is on in their neighborhood. Like, I think who doesn't want to sort of snoop?
Exactly. So you're talking about the location, that little blue
Yes,
button in the
yeah.
top right? Oh my gosh, where someone just has to tap it, allow location while
It's
using
so
app,
great.
and the listings pop up.
Like, even if I'm just like out for a walk, or sometimes I'm in the car and I'm like, I see a sign, and I'm like, oh, I want to know what that is. Like, it's so satisfying to be so immediate, and
Yeah.
to have that information right away, because otherwise you're like, what was the address? What was the agent's name? Like, you're trying to find it online. It's like you just like quickly hit that button and it's all just going to be right there, which is great.
That's a great point, because you said now you don't have to worry like who the agent is and everything,
Yeah.
because in the agent version, you're connected to the listing agent to do the deal right away.
Yep.
But your clients are connected to you,
Yep.
right? It's how it should work. Okay, this is
Sorry.
this is fantastic, because we attempted to make the ultimate tool for agents and clients to have a collaboration tool to stay connected to the market and each other.
Yeah.
I sometimes have agents say to me, "Why do I need listed?" Can you answer that for me?
Yeah, I actually, I had a colleague ask me the other day, so we have to switch over to this whole new system, which is a bit of chaos on its own. And so, but I'm quite efficient in it. I just don't like it. But so I showed him how to make a search, but I had to pause for a minute. And he was like, "Oh, do you not use this all the time?" I'm like, "I use it for myself, but I don't use it for clients." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And that's when I got into listed. And I was like,
Yeah.
everything I do client facing, the only time I ever end up on like the back end in Realm is when I have to like look for comps, because I need full brokerage information. But otherwise, my whole like everyday everything is just on my phone now, which is actually kind of crazy, because I don't even like really open my laptop all that often anymore.
Yeah.
Which has created a very interesting work flow. But yeah, I think it was really interesting to be able to, I didn't actually until that moment realize how much I used listed, and like the like it I yeah, like it was
So you log in every day, multiple times a day, to work with clients in it.
constantly like, and I hadn't actually realized how often I had done it, and like how naturally I go to that first versus
Right.
anything else. Like I use that to get to my back end to read like certain brokerage remarks,
Yep.
which that button was amazing.
Oh, you're talking about the integration now with
Yes,
MLSs
yeah.
through listed. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just
Yeah.
think like you solved a problem that I had, because I really didn't like the interface. Clients didn't like the interface of like what we have to use as our back end. And like now I don't have to force anyone else to use that, and I also don't have to use it for the majority of the time.
Yeah.
I think it took a while. It took someone else asking me to realize the value that I like really placed on listed and how much I use it now, and like it's second nature. And I think that the interface on it made it that way. Like it just like I slowly got more and more drawn to it, and I think yeah, everything is just easier. Like it's much more efficient to use. I think the communication level with the client is much easier,
Yeah.
and non-clients, like being able to just like quickly pop something into a list and send the whole thing over, or if I like change their search a little bit, saving that, send it over and having them save it. Like it just is much easier. I'm not spending a ton of time explaining the app, because you've also created an app that someone can download, and the navigation of it is like, it's quite simple for the amount of like robust information that you're providing, which is interesting. So I think, yeah, the value as a realtor, I almost can't articulate, solely because I hadn't even noticed, which is maybe that's the value, is like,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's so good that it took my attention without me having to put the effort into it and realizing how much I used it over other platforms without me realizing.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you because one of the things you did is that minute you saw it, you were like, I want to pay for this. This is great. And you paid for it.
Yeah, I think the value, I mean, even from what you spoke about, the value was there for me solely out of the weird things that I was like finding flaws in. It was like a quick fix, and I was like, yeah, I just think the value is there. I fully support everything you're doing because you make my life easier. Not very many things in life are like, and well, that's a lie. Not very many things in real estate right now are making things easier off the hop, where it's like, now it gave me the ability to focus on some other things and like the new rules, not worrying about like my platform and having to communicate with my clients. So thank you.
This is so great. It's so great. So, and congrats to you because you have this natural competitive advantage because now you have a tool that consumers want to use. It's this fastest growing app across Canada right now, which is great. We've had so many people
Doesn't surprise me.
signing up. It's just amazing. It's really this network effects. Like a few people know about it, then they tell someone, then they tell someone, and then those people tell someone. So we're finally seeing that. And so you, having been using it for a while, have this really natural advantage, which I love because it was always my goal that clients would get a great agent.
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting for the day when it literally is everywhere and everyone's using it. Because again, like the more you collaborate, the more you work together, which is what I think like this like app offers, is everyone wins. Like creating barriers and creating like segregated situations and locations and rules. I just think like you're really great at solving a lot of the problems on like an array of areas. So I think, yeah, I'm not surprised that it would be the fastest growing app because it's wonderful, and I speak about it a lot.
Oh, thank
And the
you.
feedback from clients, I think for me personally was the most important because, yeah, like I was getting a lot of complaints with other situations. So, I want to make the experience as like enjoyable and as possible. And like I mean, with any transaction, there's always going to be stresses. And like if
Yep.
I can avoid the search being like an online search being like easy and like alleviating some of that frustration, like any element is like super important to me. So
Yeah, or
yeah, I think
sellers wondering if they'll sell. It's just so nice to be able to have a data platform you can trust.
And like some sellers who are considering selling, like I will create a list, send it to them, and I'm like, look, let's watch these. They're the most comparable. They're closest to you. Let's just see what's happening. If they're like a little bit on the fence and they're not quite ready with like the data we have, it's great because they'll be like, oh, this just sold. This sold for this. Like, okay, like it sort of is. It's yeah, the multifaceted on sort of the benefits that it can be for any, like whether you're the realtor or the consumer. So it's great.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, we're looking to remove barriers where it makes sense so realtors and clients on the ground can be more efficient and have more joy in the search, which is generally quite stressful.
Yeah.
And then also raise up barriers where it makes sense, where we want to protect the coming soon and exclusive listings
Yeah.
and appreciate and support the new law, where we also give that further benefit to MLSs and to our national association that can't on its own have access to this inventory. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, honestly, that when I got that last week, I was like, "Oh my goodness,
This is
like
great.
it's really great." Like that and like knowing that the person on the receiving end has clients who are interested. I was like, that is, I mean, I think what every realtor would want is like direct audience to the buyer that is looking for that product. It's
Yes.
great.
Yes. Okay. Because the whole point for a client, buyer or seller, is that they have great representation and they're able to achieve their goal of what they want in real estate. It's so important to us that they have a great realtor. There are so many things I've noticed that you're doing that really work and really help the buyer or the seller understand what they want as it shifts and changes, and also collapses time so they can do it in half the time. And it's everything from your amazing Friday connection, like on social media.
Yeah, my fun fact Fridays.
Yeah, tell me about your Fun Fact Fridays.
I mean, really, that's just started out of like, I mean, real estate is a funny world, and it's no longer just, helping someone buy and sell. Like, there is like a whole other side of, um, not necessarily selling yourself, but like, having that online presence and like people getting to know you that way.
Right.
And I'm not a sales girl. Like, I hate salespeople, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're so
like,
genuine.
Yeah, like I don't ever want someone to feel pressured into doing something. And video was the big thing, and every realtor was doing it. And I sort of wanted to do, if I was going to do it, I wanted to do something that felt a little bit more true to who I am. And I do I mean, it was actually a client who sparked it because I was in a house and we were looking at something, and I had spouted off some weird fact. And she was like, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "I actually just know really weird things." And so I felt like, yeah, like that was a great way of sort of like getting people to know who I am, I guess, in a weird sense, without it necessarily being real estate related. Like, again,
Yeah.
I spout facts about real estate constantly to clients, and like that's all we're really talking about. Well, not all, obviously, but it's the things that matter. But there's also this other side of me that knows a bunch of really random things, and that's a little bit fun. And I'm not a stuffy realtor, and I'm not just going to only talk about market stats, though I love them. Stats are great. But yeah, I just sort of wanted to, if had the pressure of the industry to like sort of put out videos, I wanted it to be a little bit more fun and also informative.
Yeah, I've
really
learned
weird.
so much more about you watching them. And it's great because that all lends to that building of the relationship, which you do on many levels. And I love how you're always willing to go to the nth degree to find anything out. Like we were talking earlier about a newly built building, right? And the challenges that new buildings go through, and your client was considering that. And tell me again how you found all that out.
Yeah, I mean, with new construction, it's a little bit tough because you may not be like familiar with the building at all. It's your first time in it because it's only been, constructed for a year, and they've just finally reached, occupancy, or they're out of occupancy and like title has switched over, but some sellers are wanting to sell. So you don't know what the common problems have been because you haven't had any clients in it. You don't know, especially with a new build, there's some kinks to be worked out no matter what. So I do always like to chat with anyone we run into in the building, or I'll join some Facebook groups won't let me in because I'm always honest. Like I am just saying I'm a realtor and I'm interested, or I have a buyer who's interested, and we just want to find out a little bit more about the building. So I just like to sort of scope out the Facebook groups because, let's be honest, that's where people love to complain.
Yep, they talk about everything.
Exactly. So like you'll also see maybe they're doing like a community garden thing that
Benefits.
they've started as as a new building. So they're like, hey, let's all get together and do this. So you find out good things, you find out bad things. So yeah, and in this scenario, like I found out that often the ovens broke and the ACs often didn't work, and again, the builder, there's certain warranties and stuff, but at least that client of mine is not going to go in informed about these potentials that we can also take into consideration in negotiations. Like there might be potential hassles coming down the road, or let's just plan for a new oven. So I think those things are really great, and I think just also talking with the people in the buildings, I found out that maintenance fees were jumping before any of those owners did, because I happened to talk to a board member and then called the property management the next morning, and they actually gave me what the fees would be for that unit coming the following month. So we ended up avoiding that unit for that reason, and it's kind of terrible because I am actually still in that Facebook group, and I see when that meeting happened, there was lots of posts about everyone being how shocked the increase was, and I without doing that or any of that extra digging, if I was only looking at recent sales, we would have gone in blind to those elements, and she would have purchased. So,
and that could have made it unaffordable in the future, depending on how much
Absolutely.
it was going up, because it was significant in this case.
Exactly. Yeah, it was quite high, and that was the hard part too. Is now I'm in that group, and I saw some people being like, "I didn't account for this, in terms of affordability. Is anyone else going to be struggling? Is there anything we can do?" And it's heartbreaking because
they could lose their unit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and at that point too, you're selling at a lower price point because now those fees are going to be advertised on the MLS, and those buyers are now going to be fully informed, but you're going to take that into consideration again in your negotiations. So,
Yeah.
or just avoid it all overall, like we did. Like, it's quite unfortunate, but again, this is why I like to dig. I'm a little bit obsessive,
Yeah.
but I would say, like, my client was super thankful for that, and yeah, she called me a little detective. So,
Now, this is amazing. I mean, you're just under 10 years in the business, which is certainly not new and certainly not in it forever, but
yeah,
you're
like
just at
now the
this
35
beautiful
years.
point. Yeah, because you're able to embrace new technology and also serve your
Absolutely.
clients in the best ways. And I know another great agent is actually within your family,
Yes.
right? Your brother, he's fantastic. So, how did you get into this and is it in your family or
Yeah, so it's a bit interesting. So I went to school for art.
Oh, lovely.
And I worked in an art gallery for 8 years in the city prior. And I did like their marketing, and I was their programming coordinator. So lots of organizing of things. So I feel like ultimately I also served in a bar for a lot of those years as well, and all through university, which I think what ended up drawing me to real estate was my brother. So he and like my aunt and my cousin, like they've all been in it. So like it was something interesting that I was able to sort of take these skills between like serving in sales and then my art gallery days and sort of amalgamate them into like one where it was like I'm used to like catering to people in terms of like, offering a service, like a high quality service that like I genuinely care. I cared then. I feel like now I would say, I guess what I skipped there. So like the art gallery that I worked for was like an artist run center.
Yeah.
It was a type of art gallery that came about in like the 70s, 80s where commercial artwork that you couldn't typically sell, they started showing that type of artwork. So you can't sell it. So we actually would pay artists to show their work. So let's just say it was government funded.
Okay.
So it was more of a passion project.
Yeah.
But again, like I worked wild hours. Like they hired, I think, numerous people to replace me once I did leave.
Wow.
I tried to stay on. I'm on the board now. I was like, still, I love it.
This is great.
But being able to have that amount of effort you put in is what you sort of receive back. That's what I was sort of drawn to about real estate, aside from like also I love houses. And I love being like the number of times I used to like walk by things and be like, wonder what that looks like inside.
That is so
Now
clear
I get
you
to
love
know.
what you do. Yeah, yeah.
So it sort of combined everything I love in terms of like marketing and creating sort of like visual things, and then also like serving people and like watching them be happy, whether it's a bunch of beers or I mean now it's obviously much more emotional, and
Yeah.
like I love seeing that, and I think being a part of that is very exciting for me, and like I think really what keeps me going, because like there are like buyers do get to that like really depressing like will I ever find it, and I was like I promise,
Right.
I promise we will get there, and like then that end moment where like and again like I've never not had that end moment, like it's always been successful, and like even when we miss out on things I'm like I swear the thing that was yours will be better. And it has always been the case, so it's like I love that like exciting moment in the end. And so when I was sort of struggling in the art world, because like I just felt like no matter how hard I worked and like the crazy hours I would put in, it never really was enough to like survive in the city, let's say.
Yeah.
And so this sort of was an avenue that really checked a lot of boxes for me. And like my brother was like, no, you're using your art degree. No one uses their art degree. And it got to a point where he's like, okay, fine. And like now, like, also having him as like for guidance has been really lovely. So it's, yeah, I think ultimately I moved to the city for 1 year to work in an art gallery before doing my master's, and ultimately I'm never leaving now. So life has a funny way of working out, and I feel like real estate has given me everything I wanted without knowing I wanted it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, most realtors who get started in the business and aren't going to succeed exit in that 1 to 3 year period.
Yeah.
Right. And you got started and then you took all your organizational skills, the aesthetics, the marketing, the master's degree. Like you're able to take everything, put it together in something you love. Even when I watch your Friday videos on Instagram, you're out in the neighborhood and I see what you love and I see what you're doing and I feel really connected to you. And it's clear. You've reached out to our support because it's 24/7.
Yeah.
In the morning, in the night,
I don't
in the
like,
afternoon.
no rush.
and you always say, yeah, no rush, but like you're constantly thinking about the inventory and your clients and providing them the best. That's clear and obvious. Before we end, is there anything you want to share about real estate, listed,
Get listed.
your clients?
Get it. That's what I want to share. Like, I think what I would really love overall is just for like everyone to sort of get on board with it, because I do think if you don't know, you don't know. It's like a
Yeah.
consumer or a realtor. Like, I do just think the app is really lovely, and if real estate is what you're in, whether you're the realtor, like the realtor or the consumer, I think there's just so many benefits. Because like I watch Facebook groups of people complaining about, again, the system we're sort of have to use now, because there are some less than desirable features and some kinks that haven't been quite worked out yet. And like, again, like their back end there has been wonderful, and like people are trying to sort of get it all rolling smoothly. But I think ultimately, listed as the face forward version for clients would solve a lot of those issues for those realtors. And if they don't know about it, so like every now and then I'm like, get listed. Here's Catherine's email.
Great.
Because
Yeah.
I do think, like, you know, again, like they don't necessarily love us posting about other apps in that, but I do think the benefit is great, and I think more people should know about it. And yeah, I basically do shout it from the rooftop whenever I'm talking about,
That is
you know,
great.
work, because I just do think it's really whether my skills to articulate why it's so wonderful are there is one thing, but I think honestly the app speaks for itself. So if I just tell someone to download it, it's very unlikely that I'm going to hear bad feedback about it, because I have yet to do so. If anything, it's like creature comfort sort of thing where people get stuck on using an app even though it's less efficient. But eventually I do think, you know, the more someone uses it, they'll realize the benefits. So I do think you don't necessarily need me to yell it from the rooftop, but I will. 'Cause
That's
again,
so great.
yeah, the app does speak for itself in terms of what it offers.
Thank you so much. I love that you do that for no benefit other than you want to share it with other
Yeah,
people.
need to know. It's great.
And people need to know. Thank you. Yeah. And it's actually the best thing for MLSs because we work with organized real estate, and you can't be an organization that depends on directors that are active in the industry, not part of technology, meet 12 times a year, and expect that you're going to be able to make a product that's going to serve all your members' needs, especially when it's bordered by the edge of your MLS.
Yeah.
So I really do believe in any industry that openness to all kinds of products and competition and inviting that in so the most innovative products can be adopted naturally is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm glad you're part of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Honestly, again, I honestly probably open that app every like 5 minutes in a day. It's kind of crazy, but I am like highly dependent on it now. And if it were to go away, I don't know what I would do. So keep going.
Well, great. Well, everybody using it will keep it for you and
Yeah.
keep us going. And we are dedicated to always being an agnostic agent and organized real estate supported platform.
I appreciate
So,
it.
which
That's great.
ultimately has the whole point of serving the consumer.
Absolutely.
I think the real core thing is we put the consumer first through organized real estate and the agents on the ground like you who use it.
Yeah. It's great.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and again for creating such a lovely platform, because it saves my life.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to put the link below. And so you can get the app with Mallory. Can't go wrong there. And if you are one of her colleagues, reach out and talk to her about it. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mallory.
Thank you.